Glossary. Project Management. Terms and Definitions. Course 3. B. Backward pass refers to starting with a final task or milestone and then moving backwards through the schedule to determine the shortest path. Baseline, the dollar amount used to measure against to find out whether a project is on track or not and to measure the success of the project. Baseline, a budget, the act of creating a fixed reference point of spending to measure and compare a project's progress against. Bottom-up approach, thinking about all the parts of a project from the beginning to the end, including making a list of anything that comes with an associated cost and adding all of it together. Budget, the estimated monetary resources needed to achieve the project's goals and objectives. Budget pre-allocation, a situation where a budget is set before the project begins. Budget risk, the possibility that the costs of a project will increase due to poor planning or expanding the project's scope. Buffer, extra time added to the end of a task or project to account for unexpected slowdowns or delays in work progress. C. Capacity, the amount of work that the people or resources assigned to the project can reasonably complete in a set period of time. Capacity planning refers to the act of allocating people and resources to project tasks and determining whether the necessary resources required to complete the work on time have been acquired. CAPEX, capital expenses, refers to expenses which businesses incur to create a benefit in the future. Cash flow, the inflow and outflow of cash on a project. Cause and effect diagram, a visual that shows the possible causes of an event or risk, also known as a fishbone diagram. Communication, the flow of information includes everything that's shared, how it's shared, and with whom. Communication plan, a document that organizes the process, types, and expectations of communications for a project. Contingency budget, money that is included to cover potentially unforeseen events that aren't accounted for in a cost estimate. Contingency reserves, money added to the estimated project cost to manage identified risks. Cost of quality, costs that are incurred to prevent issues with products, processes, or tasks. Cost Performance Index, CPI, the ratio of the percentage complete to the actual costs. Cost variance, CV, the difference between the amount of budget expected to be spent on versus what is actually spent for work completed at a point in time. Critical path, the list of project milestones that must be reached in order to meet the project goal on schedule, as well as the mandatory tasks that contribute to the completion of each milestone. D. Decision tree, a flowchart that helps visualize the wider impact of a decision on the rest of a project. Dependency, a relationship between two project tasks, where the start or completion of one depends on the start or completion of the other. Dependency graph, a visual representing the dependencies in the flow of work during a project. Direct costs, costs that occur directly in a project. E. Earliest start date, in the critical path method, the earliest possible date on which a task, or the project itself, can begin. Earned value management, EVM, a technique where a project's performance or actuals for budget and schedule are regularly monitored against the planned budget and schedule. Effort estimation, a prediction of the amount and difficulty of active work required to complete a task. Empathy, a person's ability to relate to the thoughts and feelings of others. Ethical trap, an issue that may cause a person to make unethical choices. F. Finish to finish, FF. In this type of dependency relationship, the first task must be completed before the second task can be completed. Finish to start, FS. In this type of dependency relationship, the first task must be completed before the second task can start. Fishbone diagram, a visual that shows the possible causes of an event or risk, also known as a cause and effect diagram. Fixed contract, a contract that is paid for when certain milestones are reached. Fixed costs, costs that won't change over the course of a project. Fixed start date, the date on which work on a task must start in order to achieve a goal. Float, the amount of time that can be waited to begin a task before it impacts the project schedule and threatens the project outcome. Forecast, a cost estimate or prediction over a period of time. Forward pass, refers to starting at the beginning of a project task list and the moving forward towards the end of the project. G. Gantt chart, a horizontal bar chart that visually maps out a project schedule and tasks, with clear breakdowns of who's responsible for the work and when those tasks are due. H. High-level risk, a risk that is serious and can affect the overall success of a project, requires direct communication with stakeholders to go over plans to mitigate and address. I. Impact, the damage a risk could cause, if it occurs determined on a scale of high, medium, or low indirect costs, costs that can't be linked directly to a project. Inherent risk, the measure of a risk, calculated by its probability and impact. Issue, a known and real problem that can affect the ability to complete a task. K. Kanban board, a visual tool used to manage tasks and workflows. Kickback, a corruption scheme where a certain percentage of an awarded contract is offered to an official who can ensure that their company wins the bid. Knowledge management, a way of ensuring that project data can be accessed in the future by others who need it for informing decisions or planning similar projects. L. Latest start date, in the critical path method, the latest possible date on which a task, or the project itself, can begin. Leverage experts, refers to gathering experts' insights to do something more effectively. Low-level risk, a risk that may not greatly impact the project and may have a low probability of occurring, so a project manager may or may not communicate it to stakeholders. M. Management reserves, a percentage of the budget set aside for unknown risks. Medium-level risk, a risk that requires direct communication with stakeholders and should be treated as urgent, as it will most likely impact the project. Milestone, an important point within the project schedule that indicates progress and usually signifies the completion of a deliverable or phase of the project. N. Need-to-know basis, telling someone facts they need to know at the time they need to know them, and nothing more. Network diagram, a visual that sequences project tasks in order of dependencies. Non-disclosure agreement, NDA, document that keeps confidential information within the organization. O. Open-ended question, a question that cannot be answered with a yes or number. OPEX, operating expenses, refers to expenses which are required for day-to-day tasks within the company. Optimism bias, when a person believes that they are unlikely to experience a negative event. P. Parallel tasks, tasks that can happen at the same time as other tasks. Personally identifiable information, information that could be used on its own to directly identify, contact, or precisely locate an individual includes email addresses, mailing addresses, phone numbers, precise locations, full names, and usernames. Planning fallacy, describes people's tendency to underestimate the amount of time it will take to complete a task, as well as the costs and risks associated with that task. Planning phase, the second phase of the project life cycle includes the schedule, the budget, and the risk management plan. Probability and impact matrix, a tool used to prioritize project risks. Probability, the likelihood that a risk will occur. Procurement, obtaining all of the materials, services, and supplies required to complete the project. Project budget, the estimated monetary resources needed to achieve the project's goals and objectives. Project buffer, extra time tacked onto the end of a project. Project kickoff meeting, the first meeting in which a project team comes together to ground everyone in a shared vision, gain a shared understanding of the project's goals and scope, and understand each person's individual roles within the team. Project management baseline, PMB, a clearly defined fixed starting point for your project that includes the scope, budget, and schedule. Project plan, a document that records the scope, tasks, milestones, and overall activities of a project generally contains these 5 basic elements: tasks, milestones, people, documentation, and time. Project task, an activity that needs to be accomplished within a set period of time. R. Reforecast, creating a separate revised budget based on how a project is tracking. Request for proposal, RFP, document that outlines the details of a project. Reserve analysis, a method to check for remaining project resources. Resource cost rate, the cost of a resource. Risk, a potential event which can occur and impact a project. Risk appetite, the willingness of an organization to accept the possible outcomes of a risk. Risk assessment, the stage of risk management where qualities of a risk are estimated or measured. Risk management, the process of identifying and evaluating potential risks and issues that could impact a project. Risk management plan, a living document that contains information regarding the identified risks, estimates of their probability and impact, and the mitigation plans for those risks. Risk register, a table or chart that contains a list of risks. Root cause, the initial cause of a situation that introduces a risk. S. Schedule, the project timeline, which includes the start date, the end date, and dates for events in between. Schedule Performance Index, SPI, the ratio of the percentage of work complete to the planned budget for the planned work. Schedule variance, SV, the difference between the amount of work expected to have been completed and the amount actually completed at a given point in time. Scope risk, the possibility that a project won't produce the results outlined in the project goals. Sequential tasks, tasks that must be completed in a specific order. Single point of failure, a risk that has the potential to be catastrophic and halt work across a project. Slack, the amount of time that a task can be delayed past its earliest start date without delaying the project. Soft skills, personal characteristics that help people work effectively with others. Sole supplier sourcing, when a company restricts the bidding process to one supplier, preventing competition. Start to finish, SF, in this type of dependency relationship, the first task must begin before the second task can be completed. Start to start, SS, in this type of dependency relationship, the second task can't begin until the first task begins. Statement of work, SO, a document that clearly lays out the products and services a vendor or contractor will provide for the organization. Subtasks, smaller tasks that are required to complete a larger task. Subject matter expert, SME, a team member with a deep understanding of a particular job, process, department, function, technology, machine, material, or type of equipment. Summary task, a header at the top of a project plan that describes a collection of subtasks. T. Task buffer, extra time tacked onto a specific task. Time and materials contract, contract paid monthly based on the hours worked and other fees associated with the work, like travel and meals. Time estimation, a prediction of the total amount of time required to complete a task. Time risk, the possibility that project tasks will take longer than anticipated to complete. Time phase a budget, the act of spreading budget items out over the duration of a project. Total cost of ownership, TCO, the total cost of a project, from the initiation phase through completion. V. Vendors, individuals or businesses who provide goods and services to the project. W. Work breakdown structure, WBS, a tool that sorts the milestones and tasks of a project in a hierarchy, in the order they need to be completed.